There basically is two types of bones: cortical bone and trabecular bone. Cortical, also being known as compact bone, is the outer layer of usually cylindrical bones or any structure-bearing bone. The outer layer of it is usually a cortical bone because of its dense nature. It's dense, and as we'll see later, made up of calcium hydroxide and calcium phosphate, which are really dense ceramics. The inner part of it is filled with cortical bone, cancellous bones, which are trabecular bone, or also even known as spongy bone, and it has this honeycomb structure, and it's porous. There's a lot of gaps in it, and we're going to see how that also plays a role in mechanical properties. But it allows for a marrow and other materials to fill up the place. And in the middle of the bone, like the really center of the bone, usually, typically, they have this marrow. In long bones, they have the marrow, and that's where cells are stored. And they don't play any structural support of the bone, but they basically can be used as storage and the other functions of the bone that we have stated in the previous videos. Okay, bone cells. Every organ in our body is made up of cells. So how are bone cells made and function? Well, there are three kinds of them. Osteoblasts. These are the cells that build the bone. And how they do that is they make collagen fibers, and then they secrete it. They expel it into the surrounding area. And osteoblasts and these bones come from connective tissues, and they have this web-like structure, and the bones are spread out, and what they do is they release their content in between the adjacent cells. And so in that case, they would produce these collagen fibers and then excrete them there. And they also initiate calcification. So once the collagen fibers are filled in, they're like, if you know, reinforced concrete. So once the collagen fibers do fit in, these calciums are going to be like a concrete mix that holds the entire bone together. And calcification, as we'll see later, forms calcium phosphate or calcium hydroxide. These are ceramics, which makes them very tough and strong. And then later on, once they fill the surrounding, so in this case, if these are going to be like, if we call these cells, in this case these are holes, but if these were cells, then what's going to happen is they're going to fill the surrounding, and what's left for the cell will just convert into osteocytes. And now, instead of building bone and making collagen fibers, what they're going to do is maintain the bone. They're going to make sure the bone is in the right concentration, contents, space, and whatever. This is not a physiology class or anatomy class. But, yeah, basically, they will convert from osteoblasts to osteocytes. And then the third class is osteoclasts. And these are a fusion of about 50 or even more than 50 monocytes. And monocytes are a type of phagocytes. They eat cells. And these cells join together, and they have this cluster, and they call this osteoclast. And what they do is they digest the bone that has been already formed. And it allows it for many reasons. Number one, for calcium reabsorption. If the body needs calcium, it can release it out. Or to maintain it. Like, if you were to mend something, you would remove parts of it and then, you know, place a new one in. And the likes. These class of cells are responsible for that maintenance. And, yeah, general part. The components of these bones, they're 1/3 organic, that being collagen fibers and the likes of them. Organic meaning that they're made up of, as we say, carbon chains and hydrogen bonds. And collagen fibers are proteins, and proteins are amino acids. And as we know, amino acids are organic compounds. And what these collagen fibers do, they allow resilience. They allow the structure to remain as is. These collagen fibers resist the compression from external loading, if it was like a femur. taking the load of the body, then yeah, it would resist the compression. And usually these collagen fibers are like long fibers, and they're parallel to the length of the bone. And then we have inorganic compounds, which are like the ceramics, calcium phosphate and calcium hydroxide. But there's also minerals. There are also minerals. Magnesium, fluorine, sodium, and these are what gives it the hardness. Just like glass is really hard, it resists deformation. These minerals, these inorganic ones, give the bone that characteristic strength in them. Whereas the collagen fibers would give it that kind of metallic, like metallic ability where it can support it, but if a lot of force is applied, it will be able to deform and bend. We call osteogenesis the tissue formation, which is part of bone development. And initially, when a child grows up, it produces more bone. But once you reach adulthood, the bone is basically into a repair cycle. And instead of being responsible for creating bones, what they really do is just, swap bone, digest matrix that need to be digested, reform it, patch it up. If there was a crack, refill the place, etc.